Hello there, I'm Thomas from She Died in a Parking Lot. This is the final part of my first video series about Synthwave, where I show you some music production tips and take you through my music composition process. If that's possible for you, please listen with some headphones or some good speakers. So let's make a beat, Synthwave style, and today we talk about mixing your track. Today I want to talk to you about mixing. How to mix could take a very long video series as well. I'm going to try to speak about major guidelines, how I start a mix, how I take my decision, and try not to be too long about the subject. Let's say you finish your song and you're happy about it, which can be a very difficult personal process, but that's another discussion. Okay, so you've made your final decision about the song, about how your instruments sounds. First thing I'm going to do when I'm starting to mix is to save as a new project. So let's keep it in the same folder. Let's just add mix. That way I can't delete anything I did before, which can be quite convenient sometimes. Then I would check if I don't have any clipping instruments. So I would open everything, find the most intense or a part where I have all my instruments, play it, and check my meters to see if nothing goes to the red. I don't have any faders which are above 0, and I don't have anything which gets really loud in the meters. For example, if you add some faders which are really low with a really high volume, you probably have a gain issue. If that happens, you can go back to your instrument tracks and make sure that your meter doesn't go as much as -12 when your fader is around 0. It's more of a guideline than a general rules. And you can also check that with a VU meter. I will put a link in the video description for that one, which is free. It's the MV Meter 2. And what it's gonna do, it's going to show you the real volume level of your instruments. So right now I have it on my analog dream pads right there. So it's really good for now, no clipping. But for example, just to show you what I mean, let's push the volume real high and put this one down. My volume here could be the same, but pre-fader it could be clipping. So you have to be aware of that so you don't have any distortion on your signal. Okay, now that I have checked if my gain is good on my tracks, I would select all of my instrument tracks. Here we go, so just the instruments and not the bus or anything else. I will go to File, Bounce Tracks to their place, or Control Command B. I would replace my track, ignore the FX slots, and I won't include the automation of the volume. I just want here to bounce the raw audio track of my instruments. So let's do that, and now we wait. Okay, now I have my audio tracks right there. I won't need the MIDI tracks anymore. Let's delete those. Hold on there, that was a huge mistake. By deleting the MIDI parts, I also deleted the automation that I did on some effects. So keep in mind to not delete those MIDI parts on the track stacks in Logic. I also noticed that I forgot to put the transition effects in the right mix bus, so don't forget to do that. Then, before starting working on my mix, and I feel it's one of the most important thing in the process, is trying to find a reference track. It could be a track that inspired your song, or something that have the same kind of instrumentation, the same kind of vibe, or something you want to work toward to as a goal. And I say that it's one of the most important thing in the mix process, because you need that kind of reference so you can hear where you want your mix to sit. And maybe just before working on your track, you listen to a whole different genre of music, so your ears are tuned to what you heard just before. It's like a map for your ears. Let's say you're going to a hotel on a city you never visited? Would you rather prefer to go wandering in the streets and losing hours to find your hotel or having a map and now you know how to go to that hotel? Well, it's kind of the same thing for me, at least with a reference track. So let me import the one I used for the structure, which was Running in the Night from FM 84, which you have to listen to. And one cool thing about doing a mix bus right there, it's you can mute your reference track and solo it to go back and forth between your mix and your reference track without having your reference track going through your mix effects chain. One thing I like to have on my stereo out and not on my mix bus, that's very important, is a multimeter. You can put an EQ, but I like the multimeter so I can also check my loudness. That way on the stereo bus you can monitor your mix bus and your reference track. Alright, I'm going to put it there for now. I would start to work on a static mix on the most intense part of my track, or the part where all my instruments are playing. That way I know when all my instruments are playing, they sound good together. So when it's more quiet or I have less instruments playing, they're gonna sound good anyway. So I would listen to my mix and to my reference track back and forth to hear the differences, to see where I have to put my work on, and also try to match the volumes of my mix bus and my reference tracks, so my perception of the frequencies related to the volume wouldn't be too much biased. After listening a few times to the two tracks, I can already tell that my mix has a bit more energy on the mid frequencies, as my reference track is a bit more compressed and has a bit more of bass and higher frequencies. It's also wider on certain instruments. So usually when I start mixing the different instruments of my drums, then go to my bass so I can mix it with the kick and add the other instruments one by one. Also, one thing to keep in mind is that your instruments have to sound good together. And one of the mistakes I used to make is that I made the best sounding instruments on a solo track. So that instrument was like big sounding and sounded really great by itself, but as soon as I put all the other instruments, it was buried in the mix and there was nothing I could do about it. I'm going to show you just a few guidelines and things to pay attention to when you're mixing your drums and your bass. I think I already spoke about that in a previous video, but try to keep your bass frequencies as much as you can in mono. That way you don't have any phase issue and your bass frequencies sound big. And that's what we want. Alright, let's check that on the bass. For example, I'm going to add a stereo analyzer just before my sidechain compression. I'm going to show you that with Ozone Imager 2, which is free. I will put a link in the video description. So let's solo my bass. As you can see, the bass goes a bit everywhere on the stereo spectrum, and that's something I don't want. So before that, there are a few tools to do that. I'm going to show you how to do that in Logic. So on my imaging right there, you can use the Ozone 9 Imager, which is fantastic for that, but you can also do that with the Direction Mixer, which is included in Logic. In my mixer right there, I'm going to split my frequencies, and here you can control the spread intensity of the two bands you have. So I know I will want my low frequencies to be in mono, and here I want to keep the other frequencies of my bass as much as the center as I can. Let's put the spread somewhere around here, so it's just not too much, but not full mono. And let's set the crossover while listening to the bass. As you can see, the bass is now more center focused in the mix. So before and after. Really simple correction if you want to be sure that bass instrument or your bass frequencies are full centered. I'm going to do the same stuff on my kick. As you can see, it's already full mono, so that's perfect. Speaking of imaging and stereo processing, I think that a lot of our instruments are not wide enough and they all overlap each other a bit in the center. For example, the pads and the plugs could definitely benefit for a bit more of a wider signal. So to show you what I mean, let's solo the pads. I'm going to open the imager I have. As you can see, I already played with the width and the stereo and the what? And the stereoize faders on the plugin. Let's activate it. And I'm going to do a little before and after so you can hear the difference. But as I said earlier, you have to check that with the full mix and not just in solo. It was just to show you what I did on this particular instrument. So I think you can hear my pads are now more on the sides and we can hear them way better than where they were before. Let's do the same with the plugs. So a little before and after. I think that's way better. I worked a bit on the mix and I wanted to show you a few stuff I like to do to glue my instrument a bit together. First thing you can do is to bus them to a reverb. Let's take the one we already had for the drums and we're gonna tweak it a bit more. So this time we don't want any dry signal going through it. Full wet. Now I'm going to solo the reverb and send my instrument to it. So basically I'm just gonna do a mix for my reverb. In Logic I can click there so I have my send as faders and let's see how it goes. One thing to keep in mind is that you don't want too much reverb on your bass frequencies, and if you can put them in mono, so in chroma verb, you can do that right there, but you could also do direction mixer trick. But just to be sure, I'm going to add another EQ. Now I'm going to play my mix and I'm gonna add the reverb progressively until I really hear it in the mix, and then I'm gonna back off just a bit. For my taste, I like that to be a bit subtle, and I think it's just glue the instruments together just a bit more, like they're all in the same room. One thing you also can do is put a compressor at the end of your reverb and sidechain it with the kick. That way you're sure you're never gonna have reverb when the kick plays, so your kick is always in the front. A bit subtle, but I like that, and I definitely can hear the difference on the kick with the sidechain. Another thing you can do to glue your instruments a bit more together is to put a compressor on your mix bus, and don't try something too crazy. Something around 2 or 2.5 for the ratio. For the attack, depending on your mix and on your track, try to start from 10 milliseconds or something like that and increase or decrease it while playing your mix. And we'll try to have something around 3 dBs of compression. Let's try that. An important thing as well to do with the compressor is to try to keep your levels matched. Try to have the same level of volume with and without the compressor, so when you disengage the compressor you can hear what the compression do and not the volume difference. I like that level of compression, but I think it's a bit too much. So what I'm gonna do here is just play with the mix, so I can mix the dry signal with the compressed signal. So basically that's parallel compression right there. It's when you mix your dry signal with a compressed signal. You can do that with a way more compressed signal, it works as well. Without the reverb and the compressor, it sounds like that. And with... It's not that huge of a difference, but it's definitely noticeable, and it changed the vibe and the punch of your song. So as you can see, with just a few reverb and the compression, the instruments really come a bit more together, and that's what I wanted for that, so that's perfect. And that's it for this video. As I said, there's a lot more to tell about mixing, but I hope you enjoyed those tips and free plugins. I will probably do more mixing videos in the future anyway. Keep in mind that what I showed you are more guidelines or starting points than general truth, because every track or every mix will need a different touch of compression, of EQ, of reverb, and there are a lot of ways you can do what I show you. And I'm curious, is there anything you would have done differently than what I showed you in this video? Please let me know in the comments. I think I have a bit more of work to do on the mix, and I will post the final track in next week's video. I hope you enjoyed this video series. Please let me know what you think in the comments and feel free to ask me any question. If that's not already done, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more music content like that and the final track next week. Thank you so much for watching, I'll see you next time.